Welcome back to Overtime Heroics MMA. I'm Mason Shatwell, and joining me today is the almighty fighting championship boss, Ray Thompson. Ray, how are you, mate?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Before I start, I want to congratulate you on a successful year for Almighty.
Yeah, it's been good to be back. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, we've got some events to talk about in the year coming up, but I want to talk about the ones you've had this year. Talk to me. How have they been?
Yeah, I mean the first one back in August was nerve wracking because it had been such a long time. I know that I know what I'm doing, but having not done a show for 16 months, you're just worried about anything going wrong, basically. So the first one was back at the Metrodome in August. Again, obviously I matched the cards myself. I was happy with the matching on the cards. It's something that we're known for. The fight card delivered. We had some big moments. We had a big heavyweight knockout at Pro. The main event was really good with Johnny Brocklesby, and Johnny Brocklesby is a big fan favourite at the Metrodome. When he fights, it's always an amazing atmosphere, and he's such an exciting fighter to watch, win or lose. So that was good to be back. It was our busiest show to that point, which was exciting. Our pay-per-view figures were the biggest we've done to that point, which was exciting. And then we had that show. Then we had two shows in a week in September. Back in Liverpool, which we've done shows in Liverpool before. Liverpool's always exciting because there's so many good gyms in Liverpool, and they're so competitive. And obviously, we've seen quite a lot of fighters come out of Liverpool and go to the UFC, which is, of course, where everyone's aiming for. So again, that was good. We had problems with the main event. We had people pull out, so the main event wasn't what I would have hoped for, but the rest of the card was good. Then a week later, we went to Newcastle, our first show up in Newcastle. Again, the pro card on that pretty much stole the show, really. Everyone was raving about the pro card afterwards. We had some amazing fights. Mark Ewan and Tom Mullen. Callum Mullen fought Alex Bodnar. We had the main event, which was Shad Shack and Aaron Robinson. We had Linchana Green. And everyone was just raving about how good the show was. Linchana fought Jay Barker, sorry. So everyone was raving about how good the show was. And I always get my staff to vote on the bonuses, and like the Mark Ewan picked up 2 bonuses for finish of the night and fight of the night. The fight of the night was split between 2. It could have gone either to that fight or the main event between Hack and Robinson, because it was such a good fight. And Robinson caught Hack early on. Hack kind of fought his way through, and then ended up going on and getting a decision win. It was very good. And then we had a bit of a gap then till November, and we ended the year in November. Another show in Liverpool. Not such a big pro card, this one, because I had problems matching the pro, so we only ended up having 3 pro fights. But they were good fights. The main event was good. I think the amateur stole the show a little bit on that one. We had a big head kick knockout at heavyweight from Josh Carrott, which stood out. We've had quite a few big knockouts this year, actually, which has been quite exciting. We had quite a lot of knockouts on that Liverpool show as well, the first Liverpool show we did. But yeah, so it was just good to be back. It was just great to be back. That last Liverpool one as well was our biggest crowd, so we topped the Barnsley figure. And it was just great to be back and to see people there enjoying the show, and everyone afterwards saying good things about the show as well. It always makes me feel that I'm doing a good job when I get all the compliments and feedback that I get from people that I look up to and respect. So that was nice.
There was one fight I was really looking forward to seeing on the show you've just had, and it was UFC stars Mike Grundy's son, Jack Grundy, and I didn't know what to expect from Jack, because I remember thinking, is any pressure gonna be too much for him? Obviously, with his dad being in the UFC, being in his corner, but it just seemed like he was rolling with it, and I'm looking forward to seeing Jack progress. Was that a fight you was looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, when I matched the fight, I had quite a few people message me and saying, like, giving me the fire emoji, saying, that was a good fight. I mean, Alex is a good up-and-coming fighter himself. There was, of course, a viral video that went around about Alex because he'd restrained some bloke who had tried to attack him. I don't know if you saw that video or not, but that went viral, and that was, there was kind of a lot on him as well, because he is a talented fighter coming from a very good gym. But yeah, I mean, Jack looked phenomenal, to be fair. I mean, he come out and he looked on a different level. He looked really, really good. And looking at where his dad is, and not even just his dad, just in general, that gym, when you look at Darren Till and Tom Aspinall as well, and then just look at the history when you look at Paul Kelly and Terry Etim. I mean, they've got a long line of former UFC stars. They're obviously doing something right. So I'm pretty sure in the future we're going to see Jack in the UFC. I'll be shocked if Jack doesn't make the UFC.
Do you think we'll be seeing Jack on Almighty in the new year?
Yeah, I think we will. I mean, we've got a real good working relationship with Team Calbon. So yeah, I think pretty much on the Liverpool shows, I'll be surprised if he's not on all the Liverpool shows. To be honest, that's what I would hope for. But it makes sense because obviously that's a local show for him. You know, we're a good platform. We people. There's a lot of eyes on us at the moment, so we can provide him with a good platform as well. And because it's local, he can get people through the door for him. So he gets up his ticket commission because it's all part and parcel of it. So yeah, I think we'll see Jack on there again. I wouldn't be. I'd go as far as to say that I'd expect Jack to be a future AFC champion before he then moves on to the next stage of his career at some point, because that's how good he looked in that first fight.
100%. I've seen a lot of fighters rant and rave about how great of a show Almighty is, and I couldn't agree more with him. But a couple of days ago, I was speaking with Curtis Campbell, the UKFC champ, and I asked him, "Are there any other shows you'd like to compete on?" And he said he wants to come for one of those Almighty belts. So is that something you could look into in the new year, possibly having someone like Curtis on the show?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking. I've already spoke to Curtis's coach. He's obviously eyeing up the 66 kg bout. It was offered to him for February, but he couldn't make February. So it looks likely that there's a good chance that he'll face the winner in April. So the winner of George Staines and Tyrion Lockman, that'll be what will be offered if those lads are available. Of course, there's a lot of hype on George at the moment. He's pretty much cleaned out the division, apart from a couple of lads, and Tiernan and Curtis are probably two of the top guys that are up there that he hasn't faced yet. So George and Tiernan's going to be a good fight. And the winner of that, if they're available for April, I'll be offering for Curtis.
100%. I'm really looking forward to that George and Kieran fight. I can't lie. I remember when you posted that, I was saying that's a fight that I've got a feeling that's going to be fight of the night. I think one of, if not the fight of the night.
They're both exceptional.
100%. I don't know if you chose your end of year bonuses yet, but what is your top fight from Almighty this year?
Oof. Top five. What am I looking at? Top five.
Yeah, we'll go top five.
Just top five moments.
Yeah, we'll go top five moments.
Well, that's hard. I think I'm going to be going from memory. So I think they're not going to be in order of five. I'm just going to pick the 5 moments that stood out to me. So I think the Tom Mullen and Mark Ewan. The Mark Ewan finish with the elbow is one of my moments. The heavyweight fight in Barnsley when Lou Sutherland knocked out Pavel Delico. That's one of my moments. Kieran Williams had a big knockout in Liverpool over Dylan Evans. That's one of my moments. Let's go for Josh Carrick head kick as well. That was a pretty big moment in Liverpool. And the last one, I'm going to go for Joe Fields. He had a couple of big knockouts. He had 2 big knockouts this year. So either of those knockouts both stood out to me, especially at the smaller weight classes. You don't expect to see one-punch power at the smaller weight classes, especially this early on in the amateur careers as well. And what Joe's doing, because he's done it consistently. He's done it on a few occasions, and he's done it twice this year, and against good people as well. I mean, he's not fighting. He's not fighting no-namers. He's fighting good-named people who've got good records, and he's coming out and he's just looking exceptional. So I'll pick the one over Harry Kenworthy. That's the one I'll go for.
So, like you've just mentioned, there's some great moments over this past year in Almighty. I wanted to ask about the events that you've started matching for January, February. What fights are you looking forward to that you've already matched?
Oof. I mean, the January card is looking absolutely stacked. I mean, I think as of now, I've got like 26 fights confirmed for January, which is such a big amount. One of the good things about me doing shows up there is I've been able to bring in a lot of the Scottish gyms, which is great because I've not really worked with many of the Scottish gyms before because of my shows being so far away. With that being a little bit nearer, they're quite happy to travel to Sunderland for the show, so that's good. So it's nice to see some of the more Scottish gyms getting involved with what we're doing. Fights that stand out. So I think the pro main event on that one should be good. We've got Shag Hack's fight against Eagle Wojtas coming from down from Scotland for the flyweight title. I'm looking forward to seeing Liam McCracken's debut, just because Liam's got such a big name on the amateur scene. Of course, he's been one of the most dominant fighters on the amateur scene. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. And then we've also got Jack Comby and Kai Holmes. They're making their debuts on Almighty. They normally fight on Cage Steel, but they're going to be on Almighty going forward. And they've both got tough fights coming up. We're bringing a guy in from overseas for Jack, so that's going to be a good test for him. And he's dropping to middleweight as well. And he's looked as savage at light heavyweight. So to see him at 84, and I already know he's done a dummy cut, so I know he can make the weight. It's going to be interesting to see how he does at 84 because he looks a unit at 93. So the pro cards there is really strong. And going on to the Barnsley one, obviously we've got quite a lot of amateur title fights in Barnsley, which I'm looking forward to. So obviously we've already talked about George Staines and Tiernan Lotter, and that's going to be a good fight. I've booked a heavyweight title fight, which I haven't announced yet, so I'll say that here now. But I'll still be doing a proper announcement. But we've got David Wilkinson fighting against Ben Francis. So Wilkinson from Body Tub Gym in Barnsley. He had an exceptional 5-round war with Brandon Guest for the light heavyweight title and just come short. But the fight was fantastic. And then Ben Francis, of course, heavyweight from ASW. So that should be a good fight. What else have we got coming up? Obviously, there's a lot of hype on the minute on Joe Ambler and Ryan McNally. Because they were due to face in a tournament final, but unfortunately, Joe got it. The problem with the tournament is, and it happened on this night, is if you have a guy that has a quick win and a guy that has a hard-fought victory, a lot of the time the guy who has the hard-fought victory isn't going to be in a position to continue with the tournament. Ryan come out and had a really big quick head kick knockout and it was done within 30 seconds, which is great for a tournament. Joe come out and had a hard fought 6 minutes, 2 rounds. Obviously, didn't feel right after the fight. I think it was his leg. I think he said. So he took a kick to the leg, and it was still dead. A couple of hours after the fight. So there's no way he could go in and fight. And when you're fighting someone like Ryan, you need to be at your absolute best. And I think Joe knew that, and his coaches knew that. So it wasn't going to happen. So so they obviously had a lot of backwards and forwards on social media, and of course, there's a lot of stigma in fighting for an AFC bout. So Ryan, of course, wants to come and take that bout. And Joe straight away said, I'm happy to defend it. So, we're looking for that. I think that's going to be quite a big fight. They're the ones that, off the top of my head, that are standing out to me at the moment.
I wanted to ask, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, your first show for 16 months happened in August. What difficulties, per se, due to COVID, did you encounter?
What, on the first show? Or just in...
Yeah. Oh, in general.
Well, obviously, the worst thing during COVID was not being able to do the shows, and it was all the no one knew when it was going to finish, and it was all the way they were changing the rules and the guidelines constantly. So it made it impossible to do anything. 1 minute you could have bubbles of 6, and next minute you couldn't, and then there was just no consistency in anything that they were saying. So that was probably the worst thing for me. I think the lockdown was due to finish in June. But I think we all kind of knew that it might not happen in June. So I purposely booked my first show for August because I thought by then we should be good. And also by then there should be a few of the shows that have gone ahead of me and I can see what difficulties they faced. And I know there was like a 4-week cooling off period in June where they delayed it a little bit. They did the lot. It wasn't in a full lockdown, but they wasn't fully out of lockdown either. So I think I was glad that I did wait. And then by the time I come round, I think Golden Ticket had done a show, Battle Arena had done a few shows. So I went to a few shows and watched them because I wanted to, and UKFC as well, because I wanted to see. I was missing watching it as well because I'm a fan of mixed martial arts. That's why I do what I do. So I was missing watching the shows as well. So I went to watch 2 UKFC shows. I went to see 2 Battle Arena shows, and I went to watch Golden Ticket. And it was just great to be back in an atmosphere again, back with a crowd watching good fights. And they all 3 of those promotions, they all had good fights on. So it was great to see. So then when it came around, I knew I was ready to get back up and going. And then it was just a matter of just slotting back in, really. I mean, I think we only had one issue on the day, which wasn't due to COVID, just due to people not turning up with the right equipment, which was frustrating, but that's been resolved now. But other than that, the show went as well as went perfectly. I mean, I use the same staff for every show. So the way I look at it is, I'm literally just upping and lifting, and then moving it across and putting it back down again in a new venue. So there's no reason why we shouldn't just go like that every time. And we've done 4 shows this year, and everyone says the same thing every show, that it runs exceptionally well. And I think, I mean, I always, obviously, it's always nice for me when I get the feedback, because I love doing what I do, and I feel like I do a good job. But it's nice when I hear it from other people. And I think one of the comments that stood out to me was that in Liverpool, Dean Garnett, who's obviously one of the head coaches at Aspire, and as a he's well known on the UK scene. He does a lot with bringing kids through, and he's involved with Emma, and so he's certainly a very respected person. And I think his words were to me, "This is the best amateur show in the UK." So when I hear stuff like that, it makes me feel proud that I'm getting the recognition for the work that I'm doing.
100%. Obviously, as mentioned earlier, Almighty is a great show, and on a couple of my interviews, I've had people say that Almighty is one of the better regional shows in the UK, if not the best. So, as you say, it makes it all worthwhile. But I wanted to ask, apart from fights that have been on Almighty this year, what regional fights have you enjoyed watching on other shows?
That's an interesting one. So, I go to Golden Ticket as often as I can. I get on really well with the guys at Golden Ticket. Dan Casal and Guy Mumford. I've got a real good relationship with them, and they. I mean, I was commentating for them, but I've stepped back from that because I just felt there was other people that were in a better position to do it, and as they were kind of working their way up, I almost felt like I just got as far as I wanted to go anyway. Like there was that team there is Steve Cook-Abbott and John Prentice, and they're a great team, and I felt that they would do a better job, which is why I stopped to one side, and I've got big respect for both of them. So it's hard to remember names of fighters on some of the shows. So they had a real good show. Their main event of the one I went to, I think it was a flyweight fight. I can't remember the names of the lads, but it was absolutely crazy. A backwards and forwards fight. It's hard to, unless it's names that I know from my show. It's sometimes hard to remember the names from other shows. There was again some good finishes on Battle Arena. Nick Pirrigan on Battle Arena had a finish with a standing elbow. And it was that quick, I didn't even see it. That was on Battle Arena. So that was one of the things that I remember from going to that show. But yeah, it's hard because obviously I get really familiar with the names that come through my show. So when I go to the shows, I'll often look out for people's names that I know. But there'll be a lot of names on there that I don't know, and I'll still enjoy the fights, but I won't necessarily remember the names, unfortunately. So that was a bit of a tricky one. But the Nick Pirrigan one stands out to me, and obviously off the back of that, then I brought Nick in to fight for our title against Callum Mullen. That's another fight, actually. In fact, that's going to be a good fight as well. I haven't announced the main event for Liverpool yet either, and I'll announce that on here now as well, because I'm sure you won't mind me announcing fights that hasn't come out. So for 2nd of April, we're going to have a pro middleweight title. Now, I'm waiting for my artwork to be done. I'll be announcing it on the Facebook, but I'm happy to announce it here as well. Now, I think this is a really good fight as well. So we've obviously had a guy who's come through. He's had a couple of pro wins at middleweight now on Almighty, and has looked very, very good. So he's going to be one of the people that's fighting for the title. And then there's another guy who's our former middleweight champion at amateur. He's had quite a lot of success on Almighty. He's gone on to Cage Warriors. Has had a bit of a bad run on Cage Warriors and has now come off Cage Warriors. So he's going to come back to Almighty to fight, and it's going to be Hayder Khan from Aspire versus George Smith from Four Corners. Obviously, George Smith used to be of SBG Manchester, so I think that's going to be a very exciting fight. I think that's for the middleweight title. I think that's a worthy title fight, and I think that's one to. I think that personally, again, is one to really look forward to. So that's going to be on 2nd of April.
Well, that is a fight that I'm really looking forward to. I've spoke to Hayder a couple of times, and I've seen his fight against Sebastian. Great fighter, and obviously we know what George can do. Obviously, it's not gone the best for him at the moment on Cage Warriors, but we know what he can do. So that is going to be what I'm going to guess. That's going to be one of the fights of the year for Almighty, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, it's a huge fight. I mean, we've got the first 3 shows of the year. We've got 3 massive title fights. We've got Shadshak versus Igor Wojtas coming down from Scotland. So Shadj is, I think, 10-3 and Igor's 9-7. So you've got 2 experienced flyweights. Then we've got the featherweight, which is going to be Callum Mullen versus Nick Pirrigan. I think that's 5-0 versus 4-0. Again, both of them have looked exceptional. Callum is so well-rounded. And Nick's striking. I've seen him knock people out from nowhere. He looks good, but he's got obviously good ground game as well. And then we've got the one I just mentioned, Hayder Khan and George Smith, which I mean, when I got asked if I could match George, straight away that was the fight I wanted to make. I knew that would be a fight that would people would look up and say, "Oh, that's a good fight. That's a fight that people are going to notice."
100%. I wanted to ask a couple about the UFC this weekend before we talk about Almighty again. What did you make of some of the upsets that we've seen?
Obviously, the biggest upset for me was the title fight. Of course, I didn't see that coming. I don't know if there was something going on with Amanda Nunes. I mean, she obviously got tired quick because of taking the shots. So whether that was down to Juliana Pena or something to do with Amanda's preparation for that fight, I don't know. But at the end of the day, that's not on Juliana Pena. She can only beat the person that's in front of her. So she's come out and done it. And of course, now we get the talk of the all-time biggest upset in UFC history. And for me, it's still Matt Serra and GSP, just because of the nature of how Matt Serra got the title fight. How Matt Serra was kind of viewed, and he was obviously good, but not on the same standard that GSP was at. And I know GSP was still at the start of his title reign, but he was still somebody who we were expecting to dominate for a long time. And there was those two title fights to come off the back of that Ultimate Fighter. They weren't really seen as legit contenders. It was obviously Matt Serra and Travis Lewis. No one really thought any of them two could win. So yeah, and then the other upsets. I think I personally picked Kai Kara France to beat Cody, so I didn't think that was an upset personally. I thought about this after the show, and I haven't said it yet, but I did think about it. But I almost feel like the worst weight drop to do is from bantamweight to flyweight, because there's like the speed at flyweight just seems ridiculous. And the three that jump out to me is we had Brad Pickett, who was a standout at bantamweight, and he just had amazing fight after amazing fight. He dropped to flyweight, and he just never got going. And I almost feel it was because of the speed of the opponents rather than anything else. Then, of course, we had TJ Dillashaw drop down to fight Henry Cejudo. I don't think many of us thought that Cejudo would win, but certainly not the way he did. Not within like 40 seconds of the fight, and it was over. That was just unbelievable. And now we see Cody again, former bantamweight champion. I know he's been on a bit of a bad run, but he looked great against the Suncho, obviously, and he's come down. And again, the difference was the speed. Kara France was just too fast for him. So I almost feel like that's probably one of the worst drops. Going on stats-wise, I feel like that's one of the worst drops to see people do, because it doesn't seem to come off well, dropping from bantamweight to flyweight.
I totally agree there. Obviously, it is a very tough drop, but I've got one more question. What are your goals for 2022 with Almighty? I know you've announced all the shows, but what are the final goals for the year?
Well, we've announced the 12 shows. We've changed up our bonus system a little bit to try and give a little bit more back to a little bit more incentive to fighters. I'd like to be able to keep Almighty doing what it's doing. I want to establish ourselves as one of the front runners, which I feel like we've done that anyway. For me, there's a pecking order within MMA and within UK MMA, and if we look at what our pecking order is, for me, the UFC is always going to be number one. Then you come down to our part of the world, and then it's Cage Warriors, and rightly so. They do a great job. They're very consistent. They bring through some great fighters, great champions, and obviously we've seen a lot of them go on to the UFC. Then after that, for me, there's just a big pool of shows, and I see us being towards the top end of that pool with the likes of Golden Ticket, UKFC, Battle Arena. The shows that are consistently putting on fights where they're evenly matched fights, and not a lot of journeyman fighting, which I'm not a big fan of. So they're the shows that I want to kind of be in that pool and working towards the top end of that pool. That's the way I see us. And as the shows go well, and as I'm doing regular shows, I'm hoping if the money is coming in through the shows, which it is at the moment, I can start giving a little bit back. Like I've just given everyone in Team Emma £100 towards their costs. So there was 12 members there, so I've done that. But I can only do that because I've got the revenue coming in through the show. So if that continues, that's something I'd like to be able to continue to do. Just so it's not just about what I can take out from the sport, it's about what I can give back to the sport, especially at the amateur level. Because I've been blown away by the amateurs in this country. When I started doing Almighty, I was a bit naive to the UK scene and amateur scene. I'll be honest, I was, and I've obviously picked it up fast. But what's really got me is the level of the amateurs. And like if you were watching a show and you were an untrained eye, if you like, so not somebody like yourself or me who knows the sport, you wouldn't know the difference between an amateur fight and a pro fight. If you've got, you just mentioned there about Curtis Campbell. If you've got Curtis Campbell versus George Staines, for example, if that fight does happen, no one, you wouldn't know unless you do know, you wouldn't know that was a pro fight or an amateur fight. You just know it was a good fight. And that's what's got me with the amateur scenes. I mean, there's obviously little differences with the amateurs, like they wear different weight gloves, but again, the person in the crowd's not going to know that. And there's certain things they don't do on the ground, or they don't throw elbows. But again, the person in the crowd's not going to know that. But standard-wise, you wouldn't know the difference. I mean, some of the transitions, the submission attempts, the escape from submissions, you get it at amateur and at pro. So yeah, I've been blown away by the level of amateurs in this country. I think it's for me, that's what makes most of the shows exciting. I think most of the drama comes through the amateur fights on most cases than the pro fights. That's my honest view. I mean, we start the show. I normally base the show on record, so I'll have guys that are making their debuts early on in the show. Sometimes those first few fights, they're mad. I mean, I'm thinking these are guys that haven't even fought yet, and this is the level they're already producing. And it's amazing to watch. It's so exciting.
I know there's been a couple of new sponsors for Almighty. Is there any you want to give a shout out to?
We're still kind of finding our feet with sponsors. So there's no one really that I've brought in as sponsors. There's a couple of people that are going to come and put on towards the corner pads, but I've not really gone through all that yet. So I'm a little bit behind on that. But I'm going to be putting on. I wanted to do something a bit different with the ring mat as well, rather than just having sponsors on there. I wanted to have people on there that have contributed to our short history. So I've messaged the 10 gyms that have had the most wins, because I'm a bit of a statistician anyway, so I keep a lot of stats because that's just the way I am. So I've messaged the 10 gyms that have had the most wins on Almighty, and 8 of them have come back to me with logos. So I'm going to be adding some of them on to the mat as well. And I've just mentioned some of the ones that have got the history with Almighty. So I'm going to go from memory now, so I'm hoping I won't forget anybody. So I've got Guerrilla Fight Team, which is run by Dan Gibbon, Dungeon MMA, Aspire, Next Generation, AVT, Gracie Barra Derby, the MMA Academy, which is Jason Tan. I remember 7. There'll be one that I forgot. So there was another one that come back to me as well. So there's 7 of the 8. I apologise to the one that I forgot. But so they're all going to be on the mat as well, which I'm pleased about, because they've all obviously, people talk about how good Almighty is, and I'm happy to listen to that all day. But my show can only be good if I've got the standard of the fighters coming through, and these are the guys that are consistently giving me good fighters, that are putting on these good fights, that are giving me these moments, these big finishes, these crazy fights. So it'd be nice to have them on the mat, and it was great to get the response that I got, because they were happy to be. Oh, the other one I forgot was Hit Squad Hull, which I'm horrified that I forgot that. That's local to me, so I apologise. But Hit Squad Hull are going to be on there as well, which of course is George Staines and Joe Fields' gym, run by Stuart Graham and Sam Wilkinson. They're a great gym, very underrated gym, because they're not as mainstream as the other ones, but I think we're going to see big things from them in the near future. But yeah, they're going to be on the mat as well. They've got a good history with us. So yeah, so it's just nice and it was nice when I asked people, they were like, yeah, it'd be great to be on your mat. We'd love to be on there. So that was nice to get that response as well.
Well, before I let you go, is there anything you'd like to sign off with at all?
Let's just say, I'm looking forward to seeing how your fight goes as well. Mason Shatwell's going to be on Almighty in the cage against Charlie Hodgson. So two young up-and-coming fighters, 2 fighters similar age. I think that's going to be an interesting fight as well. And are you looking forward to being in the Almighty cage?
100%. I've had a few people message me and say Almighty is the way to go if you want to make it big. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to putting on a show for you, mate.
Oh, you're welcome. I love working with up-and-coming fighters, and I know that's what you are. So I was happy to get you on. And I really appreciate you having a chat. I always love talking about MMA, whatever it is. So I appreciate you bringing me on.
Well, Ray, appreciate your time, and I'll see you February.
Yes, you certainly will. You certainly will.
Take care, mate.
And you take care. Bye.